Well, when such discomfort interferes with objective investigation, however, it invites critiques for several reasons. First, the Academy so far has hardly been neutral in its worldview, as he's been noting, right? So to say, well, you know, miracles most likely don't happen, and so we can chuck it all out. If you come across, you know, Farmer Brown was walking in his field with his cattle, okay, that's good, that's good. He came across a chicken, yep, that's good. And now all of a sudden he encounters a winged creature with 1,000 eyes. All right, well, everything up to then was good up until now, and now we can throw everything out. Okay, well, that's not really dealing with anything. That's just importing your very high standard there for investigation. So that's the first one. So the Academy has not been neutral. Indeed, historians have documented that early 20th century power struggle in which the ultimately dominant side deliberately promoted anti-religious agendas in U.S. academia.
Well, it seems like they're not neutral, right?
Right. I always bring up the idea of sci-fi written. It just seems like, you know, these big brain people have come along and said, even though religion has been, you know, a dominant factor in people's lives for thousands of years, all of a sudden you get 2,000 more years, 4,000 more years, a little bit more technology. You're flying rockets to the stars, even though you're still smoking on them. Once that happens, no one's religious anymore, and you can just throw out the ideas, and then you don't have to write about it. So there's still people that did that, and so I appreciate reading those, and they're still fun to read about smoking in rocket ships. So that's always fun to do. So here, right, just not dealing with it or throwing it out seems to be, other than for documentation purposes of people are religious, seems to be a very odd thing to do for academia. Right. So far from being religiously neutral, those who a priori rule out any supernatural claims right at the start effectively deny the worldviews and religions held by the majority of the world's population. To rule out even asking questions about divine activity is not neutral.
Yeah. The objection is we don't want to pit one religious miracles against another, and we don't want to say that one's descriptions, evidence for, so forth, of their miracles is better than another because we want to be neutral. But we don't believe that miracles happen anyway. Well, that's not neutral. Right? That's the idea here, right? So he says, you know, ruling out even asking questions about divine activity is not neutral, right? Secondly, he says this approach confuses how a phenomenon might be exploited, right, by using these miracles to prove your case or your religion is better or whatever, right? In the case for apologetic purposes, so it confuses how a phenomenon might be exploited with the authenticity of its occurrence. And of course, these are, you know, distinct questions. Yes, something might be exploited, it may not, but that doesn't say anything about the authenticity of the occurrence of the thing, right? How you use the thing doesn't say whether or not it is authentic or not, right? It may be authentic and you use it for, you know, nefarious purposes, right? It may be inauthentic and you attempt to use it. But how you use it doesn't tell us anything about, you know, the authenticity.
Right. So you have something like a preacher in the 1900s, and he's going about and he goes, you know, if you don't repent, God will become angry. And all of a sudden, from thousands of miles away, you hear a report of a giant boom, and that priest just goes, look, here's what I was talking about. And what actually happened was Krakatoa blew up, and for thousands of miles, you heard the concussive explosion of Krakatoa. Does that mean that Krakatoa then never exploded because a person has input his values onto the objective thing, and so we should throw it out? Krakatoa never happened because this one priest has an account where he was preaching the sermon and this happened. No, those are two different things, and to throw everything out would discount the actual event going on.
Right. And so what he says then is that this approach, this throwing out everything or not examining anything because it might be exploited, right, in the name of objectivity, he tells us risks compromising objectivity, right? And of course, a more genuine objective approach would be to examine the various competing truth claims, not to throw them all out, right?
Right. And this is what happens in science, right? This is the beginning of the revolution. You have those star wanderers that take a turn on you and don't move like the stars, and you just give them another name. So you wipe them all out and say, well, it's the ether that's kind of messing with our mind. It's the parallax of the angle just isn't working out. And so those star wanderers, those are just anomalies. And so we don't have to look at them. And if you look at them too close, then you're one of those crazy people that believe in life in outer space. And so that's not objectively neutral. I've determined that believing in alien life is not possible. So we can't view that. And then more people look at it, and more people come to the idea that, oh, no, those things are planets, and they're actually closer, and parallax happens, and the ether's thrown out, and the spheres are done away with, and now we just elongate out the spheres a little bit more and into what we know today. And so that's what happens in science. So let us continue to do that with the other sciences as well, and the religious science being here as well. All right, so those were two. Here's the third one. The third is, if one of the a priori assumes that neutrality in the historical quest demands that one must not find data that could be construed as favoring the truth claims of any particular religious movement or movements, one potentially subordinates the objectivities of one method to desired conclusions. So, we definitely can't say, well, this one seems more plausible. So, like the Muslims have an idea that the moon split in two. And then upon further investigation, it's like, well, it might not have really split in two. It might have been more of a turn of phrase or something like that. And so we put that on the same level as Jesus' resurrection. And so we can just move them all away because we don't
want to criticize one over the other.
Exactly.
Right? We want to be neutral. Get rid of all of them.
Right. But we don't do this with other evidence. Well, other evidence, for murder investigations, we might put video evidence at a higher category than eyewitness testimony. We might put, timeline, a known timeline in a lower possibility than eyewitnesses even. And so to do this is very unscientific and pretty much exposes our bias even more. So it's not neutral. We can't be neutral. We shouldn't want to be neutral. Let's put all our cards on the table and continue to be not neutral in the open rather than this bunk conclusion that is not even possible to do.